Hi everyone, welcome back to another Blender tutorial. This is part 8. In this lesson, we're going to cover camera settings, output properties, and a basic camera animation in Blender 4.5. Let's dive in. Rendering engine first. Go to the Properties panel and make sure your rendering engine is set to cycles. If you'd like to learn all about the full cycles settings, check out part 7 of this series. I've left the link in the description. Output Properties now. Let's head over to the Output Properties tab. At the very top, under Format, you can adjust the resolution ratio. Below that, you'll see the percentage slider. Lowering this value lets you render at a smaller scale, which is great for quick test renders. Next is the frame rate. This controls the number of frames per second, and it only affects animations. If you extend the frame range, you can set the start and end frames of your animation. And here's a quick tip. If you divide the frame range by the frame rate, you'll know exactly how long your animation will be in seconds. Finally, in the Output section, set the file path where you want to save your renders or animations. Let's look at file formats. For still images, you can render in JPEG or PNG. For animations, set the format to FFmpeg video. If you're using PNG, I recommend enabling RGBA, setting the color depth to 16, and lowering compression to 0. It's not quite as advanced as Adobe's 32-bit per channel depth, but it works perfectly for Blender projects. Personally, I usually go with JPEG and set the quality to 100. Let's check out color management. Here you can switch between different render views. By default, you might see Standard or AGX. But for a more realistic and cinematic look with softer contrast, I recommend setting this to Filmic. Blender 4.5 also introduces a new feature in the Output Properties tab. It's called Pixel Density. This allows you to set PPI or DPI metadata for your renders, which is especially useful if you're preparing images for print or publishing workflows. That covers the basics of output properties. In the Output Properties, under the Format section, you'll notice a drop-down with several resolution presets. These are handy for quickly setting common formats like 1080p, 4K, or square sizes for social media. Now let's look at camera settings and positioning. Select the camera and open the Camera Properties tab. Here you'll find the focal length setting, which works just like a real lens. A lower focal length like 18mm gives a wide, dramatic perspective. A higher focal length like 85mm zooms in and flattens the image, perfect for portraits or close-ups. As you adjust the focal length, you'll see changes directly in the viewport, especially if you switch to the front camera view. To demonstrate more clearly, I'll split the viewport into two sections. On the left, I'll keep the normal perspective view. On the right, I'll look through the camera. This way, you can see both the camera's framing and the scene at the same time. Here are two very useful shortcuts. Press Numpad 0 to instantly switch into camera view. If you've framed your scene in the viewport and want the camera to match it, press Ctrl plus Alt plus Numpad 0. This snaps the camera to your perspective. A quick way to get the angle without moving the camera manually. With this setup, you can adjust the viewport, then realign the camera whenever you're happy with the view. Another great way to move around the 3D scene is by using flywalk navigation. Press Shift plus backtick. That's the key under the Escape button. This bottom is mostly above Tab on keyboard. Tip: if you do it while you're already in camera view by pressing Numpad 0, you can readjust the selected camera. Now you can move the viewport using the keyboard. WASD to move forward, left, back, and right. Q to move down, E to move up. Hold Shift to move faster, or Ctrl to slow down. Move the mouse to look around, just like in a first-person game. This method is super intuitive and especially useful for framing shots because you can fly through your scene and find the perfect angle quickly. When you're done, just left-click to confirm the position or press ES key to cancel and go back. Now let's break down the Camera Properties tab. At the very top, you'll see the Lens section. Here you can change the type of lens. The most common option is perspective, but you can also switch to orthographic or panoramic depending on your project. Right under that is the focal length, measured in millimeters. This works like a real camera lens. Lower values, like 18 millimeters, give you a wide, dramatic look. Higher values, like 85 millimeters, zoom in and flatten the image. Next, scroll down to safe areas. These overlays are especially useful if you're preparing video or broadcast content, making sure your subject stays inside the visible frame. Then we have the Viewport display section. One very useful option here is limits. When you enable it, Blender draws a yellow line extending from the camera into the scene. At the end of this line, there's a small cross, which represents the camera's focus distance. This helps when you're working with focus and depth of field later. Another important tool here is Passepartout. When enabled, it darkens everything outside the camera frame, so you can clearly focus on what will be rendered. You can even adjust the opacity slider to make the outside area darker or lighter, depending on your preference. Just below that, you'll find composition guides. These overlays don't affect the final render. They're only visible in the viewport, but they're extremely useful for framing your shots. You can enable guides like the rule of thirds, center cross, golden ratio, and more. These help you position your subject in a more cinematic and professional way. Finally, we have depth of field. When enabled, you can select a specific object in your scene as the focus target. For example, if I select the monkey with eyedrop tool, camera keeps that monkey sharp while everything else blurs. The f-stop value controls how strong the blur effect is. A low f-stop creates strong background and foreground blur. A higher f-stop keeps more of the scene in focus. The best part is that if the camera moves, the focus stays locked on the chosen object. This means you can animate the camera flying through the scene, and your subject will always remain perfectly in focus. In the Camera Presets section, Blender provides a set of ready-made camera setups based on common film and digital standards. These presets automatically adjust values like sensor size and aspect ratio, so you don't have to calculate them manually. Next, let's move on to camera animation, where I'll show you how to set up a simple camera movement in Blender. Now that we've set up the camera, let's bring it to life with a simple animation. First, select your camera and make sure auto keying is turned on. You can enable it by clicking the red circle icon at the bottom of the timeline. This way, every movement or change you make will automatically create a keyframe. Let's start at frame 1. Position your camera where you want the animation to begin. For example, move it slightly forward, maybe tilt the rotation a bit. Blender automatically adds keyframes for location and rotation. Now move to frame 30. Adjust the camera again. Rotate it to face a different part of the scene, or shift it sideways. As soon as you move or rotate, Blender adds the keyframes. At frame 60, we'll add a new variation. This time, rotate the camera and also change the focal length in the camera properties. Lowering the focal length gives you a wide-angle look, while increasing it zooms in. Blender records that change as an animation too. At frame 90, continue the movement. Maybe pan across the subject or move closer while rotating. Again, all of these adjustments are saved as keyframes. Finally, at frame 120, set your last position and focal length. By now, every 30 frames the camera has a new transformation, giving us smooth transitions between movements. Since we set the frame rate earlier to 60 frames per second, these 120 frames will result in a 2-second animation. This makes it short, sharp, and perfect for testing cinematic shots. Now, once the keyframes are added, you can refine them. Go to the animation workspace and open the dope sheet or the graph editor. Here, you can adjust the timing of the keyframes, smooth out curves, or make the motion feel more natural. Once you're happy with the motion, set your render output settings, the resolution, format, and frame rate we covered earlier. And then render out the animation. And that's it. With just a few keyframes, you can create dynamic camera moves, rotations, and even focal length changes that make your scenes much more cinematic. Here are all the settings and adjustments we've covered so far. render properties, output properties, and camera properties. You can pause the video here and use this as a quick reference while working on your own projects. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts or questions. Also, make sure to check out the playlist for the previous parts of this Blender tutorial series. Thanks for watching Part 8, and I'll see you in the next part.